Good afternoon. Hey, thanks everybody for coming to our January Project Vision meeting. Matt Prouty, if you haven't met. So I would like to take a minute to see if we have any first-time visitors. Yes, we have 1, 2, 3. Our microphone crew, or if you'd like to stand up and introduce yourself and the organization that you represent, that would be
I'm Catherine McShanahan. I'm coming from Roadside Chapel, and I get the expired bread from Grand Union and take it to the Cortina every Friday. And I understand the Cavalry does something with it also, so I wanted to get with them too. And I heard about this Tuesday at the Veterans Breakfast. Great.
Thank you very much for coming. And right here.
I'm Carl Feltel, Operations Director from Economic Services. I have known about this meeting, and I think we did used to have representation before. I'm just not sure when the last time was that anyone from the ESG was here.
Hi, my name is Carl. I'm a supervisor with Economic Services also. And yes, we've been represented, I think, until probably maybe, yeah, it's been months, but it's so nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, it's very nice to have you. Now, are you guys going to need any tech assistance or? Okay, those are your presenters if you hadn't figured that part out. So, Mayor Allaire, do you have any comments for us today? He's on the Zoom.
Yes, I do. So, thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
You will in a minute.
Okay, great. So, thanks all for coming. Great to be with you. I want to thank our technical folks for providing remote options. Those of us who have me there in person. And the reason I'm not there is because I'm COVID positive over the last couple of days, and I just found out that they picked up down at the hockey rink in the Castleton State College or Castleton University. Hockey players are going through a period of COVID, so I wish them well. I feel much better today, but I'm sorry I can't be there, but I'm so pleased to be able to provide some of this information for you by Zoom. So I want to personally thank Matt Prouty for being not only there with us today, but congratulations on being back as commander and head of Project Vision. I think that is exactly the place that you should be, and the city needs you, and we want to welcome you back. So what I usually do is take this time to talk about what's going on over at City Hall, and I will do so briefly here in the next couple of minutes. As some of you know, this time of year is spent gearing up for elections for Town Meeting Day, which this year falls on March 7th. So we're about a month and a half away. Petitions for those who are interested in running for any particular office here in the city are due Monday, January 30th at 5 p.m. down at the city clerk's office. So that's about 2.5 weeks out. This year, of course, is a busy election year. There is a campaign for the mayor's office. There will be 8 spots, and that's 8 spots available on the Board of Aldermen, which is unusual. We've had a couple of resignations, so there's going to be 8 spots open. Of course, there'll be some school board races, races for treasurer, assessor, and as well as some questions on the ballot this year. We're going to be asking the voters for their support for some infrastructure bonds, streets and sidewalks. Again, that's been very successful here in the last 3 or 4 years. Smaller amount, but to keep us moving forward on that, and also some underground pipes that need some work here in the city. So those questions are going to be on the ballot, and it looks like we're going to be asking the voters for their support for a local option tax here in the city also, to relieve some pressure from the property taxpayer. So, going to be a lot of information that's going to be on the ballot. I would encourage voters to please get as educated as you possibly can. Ask questions of the members of the board, any public official, your neighbors, and try to look out for public hearings because there's going to be a lot of information coming forward here in the next, I say 4 weeks or so. And we want to all make good decisions when it comes to the vote. So having said all of that, as Matt has mentioned today, the main topic of the meeting is going to be hearing from our folks at the state. I want to thank Carl and Penny for coming. They are regular visitors at my monthly meeting down at City Hall to update us on the situation at the hotels. Again, from my perspective, I continue to have great concerns about what happens when the voucher program ends and the cold weather exemption ends, both I believe at the end of March. I have actively raised the issue time and again with anyone who will hear me, which includes just recently a board meeting of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns where I have just joined the board in the last 4 or 5 months. Member of the Mayor's Coalition, we are putting together some priorities for the upcoming legislative session, and I have put that front and center for us here in Rutland. And also going to be appearing in front of the Rutland County Legislative Delegation next Wednesday. They have a weekly meeting. They've given me a time slot to talk about the same issue. So that on the bail reform, I'm going to request more funding for substance use and for mental health. I think those are all connected. They all intersect with the issues that we're having at the street level and for all the good work that the police department is doing here in our city. So, very busy as you can see. I think that I will let it go there. I want to give plenty of time for our guests to present to you and have folks ask questions and become more informed of what the situation is down at the hotel. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Chief Kilcullen is at a mandatory training up at the Academy today and tomorrow in an effort to get him up to speed on DUI enforcement. He has stopped a total of 0 cars since his arrival, whenever, 6 years now, I think. But apparently, if he wants to stay certified, he needs to do that. So that's where he is. It was a recent change at the state level. Again, one of those crazy decisions made there that affects us locally. So he did write something for me to read to the group. Happy New Year. By now you will have met our new commander, Matt Prouty, who serves as the Project Vision Executive Director and Community Outreach. Welcome back. As you know, I most recently served as the Community Resource Specialist, having returned to us in August of 2022 following a year-long deployment to Eastern Europe with the Vermont National Guard. Thank you for your service, blah, 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 blah. We're going to skip ahead. With Matt's transition to the CRS position to commander, we have solicited interest from within the department to fill the vacant position. If it is not filled from within, we will advertise to the opening and seek the best qualified candidate from outside the department. So prepare your resumes now. Having proven the value of the CRS program and supported by Mayor Allaire, the Board of Aldermen recently approved a FY24 budget that includes funding for a second CRS position. The budget will go to the voters on town meeting day. Once passed, we will begin plans to fill that second position. The second position will allow us to expand our response to non-criminal matters that do not require a police response. The department continues to process a large number of police officer applicants. We will begin sending 4 candidates to the February Police Academy. We look forward to their graduation in May, at which time they will continue their training with us before becoming full service officers. This week, in his first official visit to Vermont as Senator Welch accompanied HHS Secretary Javier Becerra to Rutland to hear firsthand how the opioid crisis has impacted our community. Project Vision was identified as having been organized to address the crisis by promoting collaboration to expand community engagement, build great neighborhoods, and improve public health. Early successes of Project Vision were highlighted and current struggles highlighted. We have much work to do. Other participants in the roundtable discussion included Judy Fox, Interim President and CEO of RRMC, Dr. Allison Davis, RRMC Emergency Management Medical Director, and Dr. Syed Ahmed, West Ridge Clinic Medical Director, all of whom shared their experiences, highlighted successes, identified current challenges, and offered ideas to improve outcomes for those suffering from substance use disorder. I apologize for having missed today's meeting, but look forward to seeing you here next month. Thank you, Chief. Boy, that's probably the most articulate he sounded in a long time. Let him know I said that. Oh, this is recorded, so he'll commission it. And then, so next on the agenda, I just wanted to take a minute, again, like Mayor Allaire said, I want to give all the time possible to our guest. But it is good to be back, and as many of you know, I retired from the city in April of 2021. In that short time, I was around the country and then around the world. That little adventure made me miss and appreciate this community even more. Quick story, I was with a young fella in his early 20s in Eastern Europe, and he said, you know, I've always been a big believer in property rights and things like that, but he said, I think I actually understand why we have zoning now. That was a takeaway from the thing. But so Commander Sheldon's retirement has brought me here. For the past 5 months, I have been working as the Community Resource Specialist for the City Police Department. In that time, I had the privilege of working with some of our most disenfranchised citizens. And I'm not joking when I tell you it was and is a privilege. This work matters. Many of you in this room share that burden with me, and I appreciate you. Doing life together and meeting our fellow community members where they are at in life and in their struggles will change how you see the world, I promise you. It will also make you appreciate what you have. For me, it also makes me appreciate this community. This community has a huge heart. We have demonstrated a model that disparate partners working together for the greater good can make a huge impact. State agencies, city agencies, nonprofits, healthcare, faith community, private sector, and private citizens. This is special, and I'm grateful to be back to do this struggle with you. So, yeah, thanks for having me. So on our agenda today, Mayor Allaire and Chief Kilcullen made arrangements to have our representatives from the state here to speak to the state of the voucher program and the weather exception. If you would like to come up and take the helm.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I'll answer the question. You think that'll work?
I defer to the tech people in the back.
So the good news is this, I'm sure, will be fairly brief, just because I honestly didn't know I was doing a presentation, and I'm pretty short in general,
Yes.
I would say. So, you know, luckily, hopefully it won't be boring. So I'm not sure what people know or don't know about what's going on in the hotels with our transitional housing program. Basically, we at ESD were tasked with putting together a team to address the folks that are there, how to help them get out of the hotels and into permanent housing whenever possible. So we put together these teams, which include ESD, VCCI, which is the Vermont Chronic Care Initiative, nurses. What was VR is now Hireability, and then our housing partners like ROC and Homeless Prevention. So the teams were put together. Our first task was to get releases signed by all of the clients that we could in the hotels. To date, I do have some numbers here. We have 205 signed out of what, in the beginning we had 365 households in the hotels in the transitional housing program. That number's down to 314 now. And that's for various reasons that people left. It could be anything from they found a place to stay, could be they were exited for behavior, and honestly it could be something as horrible as death, but we now have less than we did. We have completed about 28% of so the second task was we needed to do screenings on these people to determine where they would be best served. We've done about 28% of those, which is 89 households. The next step will be, after the screenings are done, that the people will be assessed and directed through referral process, they will be matched up with whatever they need, whether it's employment help through hireability, they may need to apply for SSI, they may need mental health counseling, that would go through VCCI, and of course we'll help with whatever we can too. So that's basically what's going on there.
And we still have the adverse weather is still
Right.
in play, which is at this moment supposedly going to be ending as of the end of March. And I will tell you personally, and you think the same too, that when the cold weather, adverse weather started, we really thought that all these folks that we had in transitional housing already were already housed, so we wouldn't be getting a lot of new people coming in to apply during cold weather. But we really have been getting quite a few people and a lot of new names, like names I've never heard of, or honestly, it feels like there's been a lot of people from other states coming in, which I'm not sure, why that is, because we've never really had that much of a problem with that before. So,
And any vacancies that were created through transitional housing have certainly been filled by adverse weather people, and then some, we've added some capacity, but we're still always at capacity.
right, I mean, I know yesterday, it fluctuates every day because some people do leave for whatever reason, so there's an opening, but yesterday I know we had nothing as of, I think it was like 2 in the afternoon. We luckily, right before that, had found one room at one place and one at another, but yeah, it's really difficult right now for anyone who is looking for housing. There just aren't the rooms out there. And it's tough because we have had people reported a fire, I know, recently, and yeah, there were no rooms, so it's really a difficult situation.
Do people have questions?
Well, I was going to say that I met a young woman, she and her boyfriend and their baby came up here. They were addicts in Massachusetts, they couldn't get services, they moved to Connecticut, they had the baby, they lost their services. Everybody said go to Vermont. And I've been meeting more and more of them,
Yeah,
and they're coming into Rutland. So what's your vision?
Carl and I are economic services, Carl's my boss, so he's operations, I'm a supervisor, but neither of us are the ones that make any of the decisions
No.
about what's going to happen as of the 31st of March. I know legislators are meeting and maybe things will change, but
And as far as adverse weather, we go through this every year, adverse weather, and it ends, and we've never seen a ton of people in the street.
They're behind the barrel.
Well, I know there's some, yeah.
we've
but-
just never had this many adverse weather people, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving in. But does the state have an answer?
Like I said, we wouldn't know the answer now. I'm sure they're definitely are aware of all these folks that are in housing right now, and that if it's set to end, they know, I'm sure it's not just gonna be, okay, it's a Monday or whatever, the 31st, you're out of here tomorrow. I don't, but I don't think anyone has been told yet of
No,
anything.
it's all about the funding and the federal money ending, and there's no way the state could possibly afford to keep this program going out of general fund money. Honestly, at our peak, we were probably in a week burning through what would be our whole general fund budget, so
Question. So I saw on the news today that President Biden may be extending the emergency on the pandemic with the new variant. Is that declaration that the emergency may continue on the COVID side affect a money stream into the state?
I don't, I honestly, we're not the people who
Not the policy.
answer those things,
Yeah.
but, I mean, he may have done that, but like I know our the max allotment is ending for 3
Right.
square benefits, so you probably know a little bit about that.
Right.
And that's ending based on the emergency ending, so that hasn't changed. So I'm not sure that it would change this.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Lawson from the Rutland Housing Authority. I was wondering if any thought had been given to including landlord representation on this task force that's been developed here in the area to address folks coming out of hotels.
You mean the teams that were put together?
Correct.
I think they might be brought in late. I mean, for us to put together a team, it was basically state agencies and then our housing partners. I don't know that anybody ever had mentioned that.
No, I think the purpose of the team is to get people in from there into
To-
permanent housing, so.
To refer them to the right.
Hotels, I don't know what they would do as far as that part of it. If I were a motel, I
No, but
probably would want to.
He's talking landlords.
Oh, the landlord.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know
sorry.
that landlords are going to play in addressing this issue. It seems that they may have a perspective that might support your efforts as a local team.
Well, I think because we have what he mentioned, it was basically like 4 main members, but there are the offshoots of the, homeless prevention and others,
Right.
and they are the ones that would be dealing with landlords. So this team, if it is something where it would be helpful as far as the housing, that team would probably have a homeless prevention person being the main actor in that little subgroup, and then they would be in contact with landlords and that type of thing.
Yeah, and these teams can be expanded to
Right.
include
Whoever's
anyone
needed, yeah.
that the team determines, that that's what's necessary, we would do that. Is there still a continuum group that meets?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, and then there's landlord representation on that?
yes.
Okay.
One other question, and I suppose I could have turned from my colleague from HBC, but in the interest of not having side conversations, I'll ask, I know you can't mandate services, but is there an expectation that folks coming transitioning out of homelessness, particularly those who are dependent on the motel voucher program, to avail themselves of services in the interest of acquiring permanently affordable housing?
I mean, that is the hope and expectation.
Right, it's
You
not
can't
mandated.
mandate them to do that, no.
I just wanted to clarify, as far as the planning goes, we've got the agreements that need to be signed, the permissions that need to be signed, then we go from the permission stage to the screening stage. That screening stage is just the second stage. The third stage is actual care coordination and shared care plan, and that's where, to your point, Kevin, we're reaching out to community partners, relevant supports, and doing some triage to really figure out how to best utilize the resources within the community and get folks connected. So I just wanted to I think to say there's a hard stop in March isn't really reflective of the work that's going to be ongoing moving forward. Now, obviously, there's folks that will be displaced at that point, but the intention is to work through that and support them beyond March.
Any other questions?
So, this is Dale Mayer. I just wanted to add real quickly and thank Carl and Penny for coming, and don't mean to put you folks on the spot.
That's what you say every week.
And which of course we did. The chief and I were hoping that, the folks here at Project Vision could hear directly, say quotations from the horse's mouth. But you folks are the ones that are on the front line, and you are providing the information from, to us, and then we're providing it to Project Vision, so secondhand. And we just felt it was important to kind of get a lay of the land of where we are, in middle of January. Hard stop or not, at the end of March, there's going to have to be some decisions made both at the legislative level and probably at the folks above your head about what it's going to look like. But there are real consequences on the ground here in this community for a lot of folks in those hotels who really do need the help and are not there through any fault of their own. And I want to make sure that we do whatever we can here locally and with all this group here, where we can be partners to help you in what you need to do and vice versa. So that's kind of the tone and the reason why we felt it was important for you folks to come and talk to this group.
Yep, thank you, that's no problem.
Yeah, my name is Ron Pulsar. I actually live in Rutland Town. So I guess my question is probably, well, thank you for coming, but it's probably more geared toward Project Vision, but it's this issue or topic. I'm generally aware of like the challenges that are out there, but I only know kind of what I read in the paper. I'm not directly involved. Although I'm a member of Grace Church, and I know that there's people from our church that work with the Comfort Zone, which was at the Methodist Church, and there's the Companions and Wholeness. So there's a ecumenical effort to help. But that effort is situated in the city. I live in Rutland Town, where the motel is at, one of the main housing areas, and I know that our town has had some challenges because we have a small police force. So there was some agreement, and I don't know all the details, but where at least I got some kind of funding. But I'm wondering going forward with this, and maybe there's discussions going on, I'm not aware of it, but I've been going to a lot of, in the past, going to these meetings, but being an outsider from Rutland Town, I'm just wondering how much coordination, or is there can be improved in coordination between Rutland Town and Rutland City as far as this issue? I'm just putting it out there, I don't know. Maybe it's going on, and I'm just not aware of it.
Would you like me to answer that, Ron?
Sure.
Because I'd love to. I'm glad you brought up the comfort zone. Ellie's here. If you guys haven't seen what happens Monday through Thursday, correct? At the United Methodist Church at the intersection of Strong's Ave, Prospect, and Madison is just an amazing effort to feed and connect and keep people warm our population that's struggling. To your point about folks that are in the hotels that in the town, they actually do make it to the comfort zone. I actually sat and had a conversation with folks that both were at the Days Inn and down at the Cortina, which are in the town. So I think a lot of them take the South Bus route, and it goes right by there every half hour, and they make it back.
No, I know they make it there. What I'm talking about is
The coordination, there is conversation, I know, between the select board and leadership in the town and with the city, along with Chief Kilcullen and Chief Dumas on our efforts. Quite frankly, though, those are more related to crime and safety. The area that I'm concerned about for us as vision partners are how we connect with the people outside of the criminal act, right? That's a symptom of other things. And although it's important, we take care of a couple needs on this end, sometimes this part doesn't happen. And I hope we can keep that focus. But yes, there is coordination between the two. Obviously, it is difficult, a little bit more difficult for the town PD with their limited numbers and staff. But we do talk, we do communicate. Those chaos creators that are happening in the town are also happening in the city. We're not in a bubble, obviously. It goes both ways. But we look at those individuals that was like, boy, if we could get services to this person, boy, that's 50 cases that aren't going to the district court, right? So it is in the plan.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a comment from the chat. Matt, if you want to turn around and just read.
That's a lot of work, a lot of words.
It's not as much as you think.
So they are coming to Vermont as they can establish Medicaid in one day and get free emergency housing and food stamps. The RMCED has seen multiple people from other states get off the train and present to ED. Maybe the state needs to look at residency laws in order to establish resources. This program is optional and should be mandatory to continue transitional housing and get supports necessary to move forward. I think that's a policy question. It's more of a statement, but that would go toward our policymakers. So that door actually does swing both ways because I have personally assisted people go to Massachusetts so they could get 30 days in rehab as compared to 14 here. So we do share using other states for resources. But that is something that I believe a lot of states do have more of a process than Vermont in establishing residency, whether it's mail, things like that.
Right now, we have no requirement, just,
Intent to stay.
right, all you need to do is say that I plan on staying in Vermont.
Okay, Elise, I think you're talking about the meeting with Senator Sanders. I did not meet with Senator Sanders. Unless you meant.
Mark was at that meeting. Is he in the audience?
Mark Stockton, is Mark still here? Here he is.
Mark, were you in a meeting with Bernie?
Yes, I was.
How'd that go?
Alicia was with us, the chief, myself, and he was surprised at actually as far as the substance abuse and the calls from the town and the PD, that, and he was looking more into this, and he says he'll get back to us, and that's as far as that went. And that was about 3-4 weeks ago. Is that all right? That's Elise. She was there also.
So our meeting that happened with Secretary Caceres and with Senator Welch, speaking to that, we really talked about and tried to highlight early on in Vision, we saw our cash-ready crimes went down as our treatment capacity came up, and that was that wasn't a surprise. I mean, that the science is there; it's very clear. And now we look at our post, 2020, 2021, 22 COVID era piece, where our methadone clinic is at. There is no waiting list. We have that treatment capacity. We've eliminated a lot of barriers to get buprenorphine, but at the same time, what we're seeing, the ground truth is not flattering. Our overdose rates are not flattering. So there's clearly needs to be some more investment in our capacity for treatment. And one of the things that came out of that conversation, we talked about, whose decision is it? Was it a federal decision or is it a state decision on how much money state Medicaid will pay for inpatient treatment, drug treatment? And it's 14 days. But which is why we're making deals with, getting people down to Massachusetts where they could get more time. But that's a state decision we learned. So we learned that even though I don't know what the number was, but it's a significant number of dollars that the federal government has provided to the state. I think at some point I would like, as the leader of Vision, and I think community leaders would like to know as well, how are we spending that money and why is this big piece that our peer-to-peers are talking about, our drug courts are talking about, our recovery folks, our psychiatry, addiction psychiatry folks are talking about, 14 days is not long enough. Why have we not made a decision, a business decision, to spend tax dollars to address substance use and give people more time in inpatient treatment, because otherwise it just seems like conversation hasn't happened. Our drug court people over here, treatment and recovery experts on the side, thank you for agreeing with me. So that came out of that meeting. But I do think that people are shocked by what's out on the street. If you haven't seen it, it's bad. I have already disposed of huge containers of needles that we're finding on the street. We're not okay. Our work matters now more than ever. So, but let's not villainize the folks that we're trying to help. Right? Let's do this from a place of compassion. Mark?
Yeah, Matt, isn't it also, 14 versus 28, that's like an AA, you can go in and, for 28 days and sober up a little bit of the treatment. But how do you, without getting help to get them in there, they're going to have to want to go in there. Otherwise,
So there's no question, but you think about it this way. So the question was people that want to go in. Well, if you're at a bad spot and then you go to the ED because you're starting to go through withdrawals, and you meet with and Turning Point has an MOU or some type of grant. They're working at the ED and talking with Dr. Davis, the medical director there. It's an amazing relationship. But one of the challenges has been, okay, I go into the ED, I'm suffering from substance use disorder and I want to get into treatment, but I can't get there for another 8 days, I've missed the window. And it's not necessarily about transportation. We'll get you there, okay? I'll forget the transportation, call the PD, I'll put you in the sexiest taxi in the state. My cruiser. We'll get there and we'll alleviate that barrier, but there's no bed, right? So you miss that window. People continue to use the ED because to avoid the withdrawal pains and to get that type of medicine, but it doesn't work. We need to be able to strike while the iron's hot, and when those opportunities present themselves. We have a huge lack of beds, and we have a huge lack of sober living. If you're coming out of a correctional facility after a sentence, and your housing option is the Cortina Inn, we are setting our citizens up to fail. This is not okay. So, we want to think about it that way. How do we build that sober living piece? How do we build that transitional piece with wraparound services? How do we invest heavily in our treatment beds? And does it all have to rely on our nonprofit or private sector groups? Does the state have some ownership there? I don't know. Good question. Yes, the continuing supports, that doing life with people, a year or 2 years after the fact, where that recovery coaching piece is so important that we're seeing with our Turning Point centers. Patty.
Thank you, Deb. So just to connect Kevin's question with the larger discussion, where is this housing going to come from other than, as you say, aftercare beds or halfway houses, et cetera. But obviously there's a larger need for housing in the community. And, people say things like, oh, everybody's turning their apartment into an Airbnb, or else they're taking a traveling nurse in instead, because there's a lot of money affixed to those things. And I don't know how popular these modes are, but is that where our housing is going, why it's diminishing?
That might be a part of it. That might be a part of it.
And what can we do, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily, I personally, this is the opinion of Matt Prouty, not the City of Rutland Police Department. I don't think that we mandate our private property owners to tell them, hey, you have to house whatever, because they have a big investment and we're not paying their mortgage. We're not paying to redo their apartment when it gets destroyed and paying all their legal fees for evictions, right? But at the same time, when Secretary Brown was down here a couple of years ago, it was last year. Was it last year? Yeah, it was this last year. I'm sorry. Great. Anyway, he was talking about millions of dollars that are sitting there in the rural development funds and things like that, that contractors just they don't want to pick up those projects. I don't know what the answer is. But it seems like, again, the answer or the suggestion is that, hey, we have this money, who out there wants to do it? There's not a, hey, we will build this facility, right? But I also know that sometimes we spend an awful lot more money on some of those grant things. Like this building, if I were to build it with my contract, would cost X amount. If I do it through some of these development grants, now it's $10 million. And we're like, how did we get here?
Can I add to that really quick, Matt?
You may.
And some housing folks, please feel free to chime in. Our housing stock, we have some of the oldest housing stock in the state. And so we don't have a lot of new construction. So we're just also losing houses. Houses are coming offline and there's not as many coming online to fill that gap. So, and that's been happening for a long time. Am I correct in saying that? This is not new. And so it's a problem that's been exacerbated by our current situation as well. Am I correct? Okay, I'm looking at
Adriana.
the two experts there in between heads.
Two things. Vermont has an inherent lack of mental health care. Either you're waitlisted for months upon months, or the providers that are accessible, quite frankly, I wouldn't wish my worst enemy upon them. Their practices are 30 years antiquated at best, and it's more harmful rather than good. I'm good. And the other issue is, quite frankly, where are the stakeholders in this? You guys can have all the meetings you want with Governor Welsh, but the people receiving these services deserve a seat at that table.
The round table was not by my design. I had to drive the chief there. I was the driver. And I do think that Senator Welch has an ear and he wants to hear. Some of it I don't think is going to be, he's going to ask the stakeholders at the organizational level to be there, and how that trickles out, I don't know. That's a good question. But I think honestly, it's when our organizations are speaking on behalf of the people we serve and we're saying it loudly. And the proof's in the pudding, how are our outcomes? We've all talked about, over the years we talk about no one wants a police response to a mental health crisis. And so we talk about, okay, I'm at this crisis, how do I get my mental health person here in a safe way? And this is, by no means am I trying to criticize the mental health community, because it's a very difficult situation. But it is scary sometimes for a person to go to a spot where somebody is in crisis without the police. That's just a reality. I absolutely understand that. The question is, how come we get involved in this situation long before we're in our crisis, right? And sometimes that's a factor of staffing or whatever. And for me, when I interact with somebody that I see things are starting to go poorly, I may ask, are you involved with Rutland Mental Health? Do you have a doctor? And I can have a one-way conversation, because they're not going to talk to me because of HIPAA, but without a release. But I can say, I just interacted with so-and-so. I'm a little concerned about the behavior I'm seeing. Can you intervene? We need to do that at all of our disciplines, and not just trust that, well, their doctor will fix their medication. Sometimes they don't even know until it's too late. It's not like we're having a huge influx of people coming here to take our open positions. I don't know how to fix that. I'm open to suggestions. The position that I applied for, we had 3 people applied. You're not wrong, Adriana. I'm with you. Angus.
Thanks. Angus Cheney, Homeless Prevention Center. And this is I actually really appreciate the way we're having this conversation, because I think when something's been going, when something's frustrating and kind of throws us off balance and then goes on for 3 years, we're vulnerable to fatigue as well as compassion fatigue. So I really appreciate the way you're facilitating this in a way that we're not speaking so broad brush that it's all homeless people are addicted to drugs or vice versa. And to agree with a couple speakers who have gone before me, my organization is focusing really closely on this addiction and trying to be really honest about it. People like me have worked for a long time to try to prevent conflating homelessness with addiction, with crime, and all these things. And yet we know a lot of people that we're working with are, that's the thing. It is addiction that is making it really hard for them to go to the next step. Working with a lot of people who are clearly shouldn't have to be homeless another day, but might not be ready to step into being tenants tomorrow. So I'm trying to stretch the way we think about this and think about what do they need. I come back to the same thing you raised about how much residential treatment, are we really giving a therapeutic dose of residential treatment when people raise their hand as being ready for that? I don't think we are. But based on the waiting list you mentioned, it speaks to it's a bed capacity thing as much as it is in the state. I'm guessing the state might just be saying the waiting list become even longer if we do the full therapeutic dose. So I would love to, maybe we can get folks from the state here to really answer us with some expertise behind it. But, and to one of the other speakers' questions, I'll just keep plugging this program because I'm really excited the state is finally bought into this idea of using much smaller grants, $30,000, $50,000 to rehab vacant rentals. And Rutland can do more with that grant. If you're interested or you know somebody who might be, the local organization doing that is NeighborWorks of Western Vermont over in West Rutland. And the grant is called VHIP. And I don't want it to expire before every landlord that should have availed themselves of that does.
It's called VHIP?
VHIP, V-H-I-P.
VHIP, thank you.
Hey Matt, good afternoon. Richard Gallo, North Veterans Outreach Program. One thing I want to also kind of circle back around, don't forget about our encampments that we have around the city and outside those hotels, those people that we're forgetting about that aren't in the hotels, that aren't being taken care of as well. It's a vulnerable population that, I don't know how you would explain it, but they don't get the same services or they don't want the same services. But this is the month that we do the 0 point in time count for our homeless population. And that's vital to knowing about, when you start talking about numbers that are in those hotels, those numbers need to be included into our population around this area as well. Thank you. And thank you to the Economic Services. Your personnel, when we have to deal with them, they're outstanding. They give great support down here in the Rutland area. So thank you for coming to Rutland tonight.
So I just wanted to circle back. Sorry.
Jamie broke it.
I just wanted to jump back, Matt. Just keep going. So just keep talking. Oh, now I'm triple. Oh, just because we always want to. Circling back to you saying that.
That's good. Yes.
Hey Matt.
Give us a minute. Now they're not hearing.
So the idea of, lose my train of thought here, you talking about the proof being in the pudding, as in, are we successful? The problem is, as last I looked anyway, that the numbers don't capture those successes that didn't reach crisis because they haven't reached somebody's book yet, you know, to count as a crisis averted or crisis solved or whatever. So how do we restructure how we count so that when we prevent something becoming the crisis, it inures to our benefit, that the numbers show that?
That's a great question, and I think that the answer will actually kind of fall on the organizations that provide the service. And I'll give an example. When we just transitioned to a different computer-aided records management system, we've taken a huge step backwards in our ability to analyze data and use that to drive what we do. So now we're in this rebuilding phase. It was no fault of our own. It's a state system that we buy into that is just less capable than our previous one. So for us, it's a big challenge to look at our data and say, you know, how we are deploying our resources and how we're focused. Is this appropriate? Are we gaining ground, losing ground? It's hard to tell, quite honestly. I'm not going to speak for the designated agencies in the State Department of Mental Health. I don't know how they would capture, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that this intervention prevented something else down the road. But I think when you look at if total numbers of mental health hearings or involuntary committals, those numbers will definitely be affected, because usually those emergency evaluations that result in a warrant being issued directly relate to the work that happened before it. So I think that could be a clear indicator of whether or not those interventions are happening.
And like repeat ER visits, are they counted? Like this person has had to come back
I'm
10
not sure.
times.
I'm not sure how they capture data.
Where was that? Like where?
People who return to the ER over and over again.
Yes, they are capturing that data.
They are?
Yes.
And do they share it with, say, the mental health folks, or?
Definitely a different question.
Uh-huh.
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know who they share it with, but I do know that they're counting readmitted, people who are being readmitted or who are coming as high utilizers, people who come often.
This has been a fantastic conversation. And I'm so glad to be back with you guys, kicking it old school, right?
Pleasure.
So as we do this, Angus brought up compassion fatigue. If you got to take a break, tap out, have your partner come in. Can't afford to lose you, right? We're in this together. My folks here from Brock, I want to give them an uplifting story. So I have
We have to talk about the chair position at some point. I know.
The steering committee for Project Vision is still actively working on finding a chair. If you want to talk to that, Ms. Andy Mom, Ms. Yell.
Okay, I'll yell. No, that's okay. I'll be loud. And I'm sitting in front of the computer with the mic that's working, so we should be okay. The advisory group to Project Vision, I'm not totally sure what we're calling ourselves. However, it's the chairs of our subcommittee, so myself and Monica Banguli-Kiefner, who co-chair the health committee, Pat Hunter, who co-chairs usually with the Community Policing Subcommittee. Joan Gamble has stepped in to sort of help with this process. Chief Kilcullen, and Tracy Moore joins us as well as someone who has some Project Vision institutional history. And we've been meeting to just talk about moving on and choosing a chair. And really the discussion we've been having has been, we feel it might be beneficial for this group to have co-chairs. It's a lot of work for one person to take on, chairing this large of a coalition that has so many different working subcommittees and working groups, that we felt having two people to take on that work might be really beneficial. For one, it will help spread, I think, that workload, but also it doesn't then require a chair to step on with this indefinite, you are going to be here for as long as you want to, question mark. We can not necessarily have term limits, but have a succession in place. So that once the one chair feels that they can't do it anymore or they need to step down, there's someone who has already been working in this role who can step up, and then we can pull in another person to sort of help support the needs of Project Vision. So we did come up with a job description of sorts for people who could potentially be chairs for Project Vision. I have one copy with me. I was hoping to bring more, and clearly I'm doing as well as I am with managing the chat and the sound on Zoom. So we will share that job description via the listserv with you all, and we'd love to hear ideas and thoughts. We want to know who you all think would be good in this role. We have thoughts and ideas, and we're approaching folks to see if they're interested as well, but we want this to be somewhat of a collaborative process with the membership of Project Vision. So please be on the lookout for that. send us information, tell us what you think, nominate yourself if you want to be the person up here, and nominate other people or say, I really think this person in our community would be a great asset to Project Vision. So I will stop there and hand it back over to you for the positive story.
Brock. I worked with a gentleman for several months, and I invited Adriana and Gracie to come down under the bridge with me and try to do and help somebody fill out some paperwork. And at that time, it didn't work. But what was nice about that is we started building a connection. So a couple months go by, and recently the individual felt safe enough to go into their building, and it started off a little rocky, and then Shelley got involved, and I appreciate that, and we were able to get this individual a house, and he's been doing very well since then. I got a very lovely voicemail from him right around midnight last night, expressing his gratitude, and his gratitude to you too. So, thank you, or you three, excuse me, that row. Thank you. I'm back, email me, let's get together, we can have lunch. The beautiful thing about Vision, there are no rules. So if you want to do something, you have an idea, we ain't gonna tell you no. It's your idea.
Maybe.
If I can help you, I will help you. I may not be able to help you. If we can help you, we will. But listen, there's a lot of ways to accomplish things. Chief Baker used to say, we'll boil up a pot of spaghetti and we'll chuck it at the wall and see if it sticks. If it doesn't, we'll boil up another pot of it. But, let's move forward, let's do it together. Feel free to invite somebody that sees the world a little bit differently than you do in that process. You might learn something. And that's how we grow. I'll be here for another half hour. I want to be respectful of people's time. It's 1 o'clock now. But I do want to open the floor to any positive or uplifting stories from the group.
I just have a question.
Bianca.
Will we be meeting here, same time, same day of the month, next month, or will we be changing it up?
Pastor, I'd love to come back next month.
Yes.
We'll have it. If they will have us here, I plan on continuing the virtual option for our folks that can't make it. And I promise you, I will get better at this and
We'll figure it out.
with Jamie's help. Okay, so we're going to stop the meeting right now. Matthew.Prouty@vermont.gov. Reach out to me. If you're not on the listserv and you want to be, send that to me as well. I will connect with John Dickerson and try to get you on the listserv. Mary.
I would like just to take an opportunity to thank Matt for the amazing job that he's been doing. We're very lucky to have him. Thank you.
Okay, folks out on Zoom, we'll see you next month.